Good evening. You're watching a special edition of The Big Story with Haryanto Diman. I'm Olivia Quay.
The COVID-19 Multi-Ministry Task Force has confirmed that Singapore will exit the circuit breaker on June 1st as scheduled and will gradually resume activities. But the resumption of activities will be done in 3 phases: safe reopening, safe transition and safe nation.
Each phase involves multiple steps to reduce the risk of a second wave of infection. The first phase starts on June the 2nd. The task force said it will see more people returning to work with the resumption of critical and low-risk economic activities.
Phase 1 is aimed at allowing us to open carefully and cautiously and safely. This will take a few weeks for us to put in place these measures and to allow this opening to happen and to monitor the situation and to may have to adjust some of the measures to ensure that we do not have a surge of cases. Then we enter into phase 2, and phase 2 is a transition period. This may comprise several steps. It's not a single step. It may involve several steps of measures to be put in place, and some of the restriction measures may be rolled back over a period of time. It may involve months. It may take several months before we are able to complete phase 2. And at the end of phase 2, we will then arrive at phase 3, which is that we will have a safe Singapore, a safe nation. So phase 1 is a safe opening. Phase 2 is a safe transition period. And phase 3 is a safe Singapore outcome. So I think this is the 3 phases of our roadmap going forward beyond the circuit breaker period, starting from 2nd June.
I can understand that we have been in the circuit breaker for some time. People have been disciplined so far, but the feeling of being cooped up at home for a long period is starting to take its effect on people, and there is a very strong desire to go out, to socialize, to interact with your friends. But I hope we can all maintain our discipline for a while longer. As I said, phase 1 will take some time. We may have to continue with phase 1 for a few weeks and continue with quite strict measures for quite some time more. Because if we were to open up too quickly and allow all these social activities to restart, there is a risk that the virus will flare up and we might see many more cases and clusters forming. So we do not want that to happen. We start in a controlled fashion in phase 1, and if we are able to keep community transmission in a low and stable manner, maintain control over the virus situation both in the dormitories and in our community, then we will be in a position to enter phase 2. So we call on everyone to do their part as we prepare for this new phase of reopening and as we enter phase 1 of the reopening process. Stay disciplined, uphold personal and social responsibility so that we will be in a strong position to eventually enter phase 2 and have a broader range of activities resumed safely at that point in time.
Schools and more healthcare services will also resume gradually. The task force added that if the community transmission rates remain low and stable over the next few weeks and the dormitory situation remains under control, Singapore will then move into phase 2, safe transition, with the gradual resumption of more economic and social activities.
Depending on the COVID-19 situation and the risk assessment, Singapore will continue to ease measures gradually to transit to a new normal in phase 3, safe nation. The task force stressed that this phase does not mean the situation will revert to a pre-COVID-19 period. This phase will remain until an effective vaccine or treatment is developed.
Mr. Wong expressed that he understood that the path to a new normal may not be as fast as some would have hoped.
I know Singaporeans will be disappointed. Many have been hoping that with the end of the circuit breaker, they will be able to go out freely, to socialize with their friends, to meet their families and relatives, and even dine together. Unfortunately, all of these activities will have to wait. And I hope everyone understands why this is necessary.
Well, more economic activities will be allowed to resume in phases from June the 2nd, with 1/3 of workers allowed to operate on-site. But Trade and Industry Minister Chan Chun Sing stressed that the scheduled resumption is dependent on three considerations: health, risk and criticality.
Work-from-home arrangements will largely remain in place. From June 2nd, businesses that operate in settings with lower transmission risks may resume activities, including those with employees working in settings that don't require interaction with large groups of people.
Additional consumer services will be permitted to resume, like motor vehicle servicing, aircon servicing, as well as basic pet services. Hairdressers and barbers will also be allowed to offer all hairdressing services. With the exception of those that have already been given approval to operate, retail outlets will have to remain closed.
Mr. Chan listed 5 things that companies will need to do to prepare for the resumption of economic activities.
So there are 5 things which we would like to have our companies do in preparation for the resumption of economic activities in phase 1. First is to put in place a safe work environment. This includes putting in place safe distancing measures at work and at rest areas. It includes the proper supervision of activities to minimize the need for physical meetings and interactions, the proper use of a contact tracing system. Examples would be safe entry and trace together. And you will, of course, need to meet the requisite cleanliness and hygiene standards. So that is the first category of what we call a safe work environment. Second, we'll need the companies and the workers to put in place the safe transport arrangements. We would strongly encourage companies to stagger their work hours. For example, those in office settings that are not linked to international trade may wish to consider starting their work after 10 a.m. to help us minimize the congestion load during the peak hours in the morning. Third, we would like all companies to consider the safe cohort arrangements to avoid the cross-deployment of staff between different teams, both in and outside work. Fourth, we'll need the companies to take responsibilities and an active interest on the safe accommodation for their workers. So this will ensure that beyond work, the health and well-being of the workers are well taken care of. Last but not least, on the fifth is for all companies to encourage their workers to be disciplined and not socialize or congregate beyond the workplace.
On the education front, schools will reopen on June 2nd, but only graduating students in primary 6 and secondary 4 and 5 will attend school daily.
All other students will alternate weekly between home-based learning and classes in school.
In MOE, we really considered another model, which is called daily rotation, the DARO method, instead of WIRO, DARO method. Quite attractive in concept because you can start off to say that you come to school 2 days and you do home-based learning 3 days. A couple of weeks later, you come to school 3 days and then 2 days HBL. And then you come to school 4 days, 1 day home-based learning, and you gradually ease yourself in. Very attractive, but when we think about it, operationally almost impossible. Because every child will have a different schedule, and if you are a parent with a few children, you'll be totally confused. And I cannot imagine the bus driver uncle will be even more confusing. Every day he's picking up different children. And I think teachers will also tear their hair out because they tend to plan lessons on a weekly basis. So we really considered that. Quite a few parents suggested that to me, but I think we go with weekly rotation. It's simpler to remember. And I would have to say that a WIRO method, a weekly rotation method, I think getting feedback from parents also suits working pattern more better, because quite a number of employers actually rotate their staff to work from home on a weekly basis. Yeah? So I think they will suit that reality better.
At junior colleges and Millennium Institute, arrangements will ensure that only half the student body are back in school at any one time. CCAs will remain suspended, though PE lessons will resume with safety measures.
Students in polytechnics as well as undergraduates from the Singapore Institute of Technology and Singapore University of Technology and Design will continue online learning. ITE students will rotate weekly between online and on-campus lessons. MOE center-based lessons will reopen for students sitting for national examinations. Self-help group enrichment activities as well as private tuition and enrichment will remain suspended until further notice.
Preschools and early intervention centres will also resume from June 2nd and will reopen in phases to minimise the risks of transmission. Minister for Social and Family Development Desmond Lee announced that children will return in batches, with Kindergarten 1 and 2 the first to return on June 2nd.
Nursery 1 and 2 will then return on June the 8th, followed by infant care and playgroup children on June the 10th. While supplementary enrichment programs will remain suspended, student care centres for older children will fully reopen on June 2nd with necessary precautions.
As part of efforts to inculcate good safe distancing and hygiene habits, the Early Childhood Development Agency will also work with all preschool operators to develop teaching programs and activities for children for the first 2 weeks from June 2nd. Mr. Lee said that crucial to the reopening is minimizing the risk of infection. To implement this, he highlighted the ABCs of keeping safe.
And we call these measures COVID-safe ABCs, so the ABCs of keeping safe. Safe access, safe behavior, and safe classrooms. Access, behavior, and classrooms. So access focuses around the measures needed to ensure that as far as we can, people who enter the preschools are safe. That means not exhibiting symptoms, not of high risk. Behavior, in the sense of the kinds of behaviors that preschoolers, teachers, staff, and parents need to carry out on a day-to-day basis, both at home and in the preschool setting, in order to keep each other safe. And classrooms, from the point of view of trying to cohort the children, keeping classes from intermingling with each other in order to contain within the preschools any risk of transmission across multiple classes.
Mr. Lee added that children aged 2 and above will also need to wear a mask or face shield while in school.
Meanwhile, keeping seniors safe remains a priority and they should continue to stay at home as much as possible. Health Minister Gan Kim Yong said activities at senior centres will gradually resume.
Some flexibility will also be allowed from June the 2nd for visits to parents or grandparents who are not living in the same household, but these come with restrictions.
So we try to allow the children to visit their seniors, but with a certain restriction. First, we will allow children to visit their parents or grandparents once a day, each one household per day. This is to minimize the number of people going to the senior households. So one household will be allowed to visit their parents a day and limit to 2 persons per visit. Because we also do not want to have a big family, big household gathering at the seniors' place, because this will create crowds and will minimize the safe distancing possibility. So we want to ensure that even at the seniors' home, you are able to practice safe distancing, provide sufficient space for the seniors, and seniors themselves may have their own household members. So we restrict to 1 household visit per day, and each visit limit to 2 persons. Some may ask, what if I have many members in my household, so how do I do it? So our suggestion is you can do it over a period of days. Each day, 2 persons can visit the seniors. And it is both the parents as well as parents-in-law. So you can visit your parents as well as your parents-in-law, but subject to 1 visit a day and each visit 2 persons. And I should also reiterate that we will not allow the seniors to visit their children, because we want the seniors to stay at home as much as possible. So you should not leave your home and visit your children and hop from household to household. This will increase exposure unnecessarily to the risk of infection.
Basic training for some 8,000 full-time national servicemen will resume from May 26. In separate statements today, the Defence and Home Affairs Ministries said the resumption for these two batches was necessary for commanders to be trained and for frontline or operational units to be staffed.
About 6,300 military recruits will be notified of their reporting dates, which start on May 26th to mid-June. For about 1,700 police and Singapore Civil Defence Force trainees, their reporting dates will be between May 26th to June the 8th.
Training will be done in smaller groups, and strict health and safety measures will be implemented, like twice daily temperature taking and staggered meal times, as well as having all trainees and instructors undergo a health screening when they return for training.
Minister Gunn highlighted that the incremental reopening is also in order to better identify potential pain points.
So if you have a circuit breaker at home, you know how to operate it. When something goes wrong in the electrical system, the circuit breaker will trip, and you have to turn off the circuit breaker so that to cut off the trip. At the same time, you turn off everything and you turn back on the circuit breaker, and slowly, one by one, you turn on the switches and see which one trips again. And the one that trips again is the one that is at fault. We cannot turn on all the switch at the same time. If you turn on all the switches at the same time, for sure it's going to trip again. So therefore, we have to be very careful, turn on one by one, slowly, gradually, and we need to continue to observe and monitor as we turn them on. Because as we turn them on, if there's a trip again, then you know where the problem is. And similarly, as we restore some of the services and activities and economic business activities, we also need to continue to observe to see which one particular activity is likely to create a problem. And if that is so, then we may need to introduce targeted measures to solve that problem. And therefore, going forward, as we roll out our Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 roadmap, we need to continue to monitor, and life will not be as per normal before the COVID-19 outbreak. We hope to be able to restore to some level of normalcy, but at the same time, some of the safe distancing measures, precautionary measures, will have to continue.
Also announced today, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat will deliver a ministerial statement in Parliament next Tuesday, May 26th. The statement is expected to contain the fourth round of COVID-19 support measures to help businesses and individuals since February.
Earlier, the Health Ministry confirmed 451 new COVID-19 cases today, as total cases in Singapore reached 28,794. Among these is one Singaporean or permanent resident. Migrant workers living in dormitories form the bulk of the remaining cases. Visit straitstimes.com for more details and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. The full press conference is also on our YouTube channel. Once again, I'm Haryanto with Olivia Quay. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, everyone.